have made it to July 9th, 1864. We've covered a lot of ground getting to this point. We've been through part of the lower Shenandoah Valley. We have been out in western Maryland, hopping around a bunch of towns following Confederate General Jubal Early and his force of a little more than 12,000 guys as they gather resources, materials, whole lot of cash.
A whole lot of cash.
We'll cover cash again. We've already covered it a bit. They're going to make a lot more cash before this story is over. But we finally come to the point where the battle as we know it is going to kick off. We've had cavalry fights in West Frederick. We've had skirmishing and smaller engagements on the periphery for the last couple of days. Now, these armies that are here know each other are around. But there is a story that kicks off even before we step foot near the junction, Matt.
That's right. So where we're at is actually down near the ruins of Jug Bridge on the Monocacy River, about 2.5 miles north of what is today Monocacy National Battlefield. The Jug Bridge took the old Baltimore Pike, or the National Road, from Baltimore all the way out to Frederick and beyond. Today, behind you is modern Route 144. That was the original, or it's what is now the original route, or takes over for the original route, I should say. Jug Bridge will attempt to be crossed by Confederate forces. Jubal Early's command, the Army of the Valley District, does come out of Frederick around 6 a.m. We have Ramseur's division, Stephen Dotson Ramseur, leading the way, and his lead brigade, Lilly's brigade, will actually engage with federal forces here around Jug Bridge. Now, Early, as we've kind of hinted on throughout this production, is not looking for a fight. He is trying to get to Washington, and so he is going to run into resistance here at the bridge.
Is his goal, Matt, at this point to try to skirt what will become the inevitable part of this story? He's trying to find a way to move around where this concentrated federal force is?
It's a good question, Pat, because he actually is not necessarily aware of the amount of concentration that it's going to be occurring at Monocacy Junction. He is looking for the most direct routes.
So he's just looking to take the road.
Right. There are two main roads out of Frederick moving east. The one moves directly east, the Baltimore Pike that would have been right behind me here with Jug Bridge, and of course the Georgetown Pike that moves to the southeast, heading more directly on Washington. The National Road, the Baltimore Pike, is the better known road, and Confederate forces will actually move off on that first. Now, when Lilly's brigade runs into resistance here, they're going to be running into 3 regiments of Ohio National Guard. So these are not super experienced troops. They have some experienced commanders. Colonel Allison Brown fights very well here. He's the commander of those Ohio National Guard forces. He is going to have the 144th, the 149th, and the 159th Ohio National Guard. These are 100 days men. Their entire term of service is for 100 days, and then they get to go home. They were never supposed to be in a hot action like this. The idea was that these troops, less experienced, would be holding rear echelon positions, such as guarding camps and hospitals and the like, and then allowing more experienced troops to go to the front.
There's a major need for these troops because right now the offensives down on the Virginia Peninsula have, overland is kind of wound down, but the rest of what will become the beginning of the end of the war story has begun in earnest. So there is this need for veteran and experienced troops where the bulk of the fighting of the war is going to take place. So these 100 days men, like Matt said, are basically here to fill this void on the back end of things.
Right.
Who's going to be doing the guarding of railroad junctions, supply depots, prisoners, things like that? So 100 days is a good way to sign a short contract if you were trying to not take part in the whole war, or if maybe you wore a little white feather in a different era. This is a good way to get involved in things. But you will see that these are the guys, like Matt said, are inexperienced with the horrors of war, and that is what Jubal Early is going to be banking on, right? That's all he'll see here.
That's what he thinks he's dealing with, and that's what a lot of his commanders throughout the day of July 9th are believing they're dealing with, is inexperienced forces. However, they should have gotten an inkling of what they would be running up against when they tangoed with Colonel Brown and his men, because these Ohio Guard boys, they put up a heck of a fight here. The fighting's going to begin sometime after 6 a.m., and Lilly's brigade is delayed. It is stopped cold in its tracks by these soldiers to the point where Stephen Dotson Ramseur is going to look at an alternative crossing, which would pull his division back towards Frederick and over to the Georgetown Pike, leading to the eventual action just outside Monocacy Junction.
Now we had to be clever with this shot here just to sort of kick off the battle, because we wanted to take you down to a place you're not often going to see. If you come to Frederick, Maryland, you go to the official National Park battlefield, this is not on their property. This is
Correct.
not something that you have access to in general, but we thought this was neat because the remnants of the bridge still exist. Behind me, you can see the edge of the stone trace. We'll cut in some overlap here, but you can see that this physically was where the Army had sort of positioned itself. But as we learned from Matt in pre-production, this is not the central focus of the fighting here. It's not specifically over the bridge. So we'll be showing you scenes right now of a ridge line sort of just behind where the camera is set up here. And there's going to be how many ridges? 2 ridges over there?
There's 2 distinct ridge lines. The 144th, 149th will advance to the first ridge line, where there's actually a Maryland National Guard quartermaster's depot today, and they will be fighting against Confederate forces on yet another ridge closer to Frederick that is higher than them. Now there's going to be a lot of Confederate sharpshooters up there, because once Ramser's division is pulled out, Robert Rhodes' boys come in. And Rhodes has a bunch of sharpshooter battalions with him, and those men are going to be fighting down here near Jug Bridge as well. Interestingly enough, we have something of an early war tactic going on right here at the fighting at Jug Bridge. At one point, as Confederate forces are working their way around the flank of Allison Brown's Ohio National Guard units, we would actually have a bayonet charge ordered.
Wow, in 1864, huh?
1864, bayonet charge right here, just beyond where the camera is sitting, beyond the 2 modern bridges. Behind you, we would have a bayonet charge. These Ohio National Guardsmen would actually drive back Confederate forces that are trying to get around their flank. The Confederates initially are so surprised by this that some of the accounts from Rhodes' men almost sounds like they're laughing about it. But they are going to get in there very close with the bayonets.
They were laughing until the bayonets came into their lines, and then they were like, "Oh no, this is very real."
Right.
So this is a peculiar part of the battlefield, because I feel like when we try to study Monocacy, we very quickly in our study get over to the action on the 3 main farms and the mill that's over there.
Correct.
How long does the fighting at Jug Bridge stretch by comparison to the major action kicking off that's the rest of the day?
And I'm glad that you're asking that question, Pat, because Jug Bridge doesn't get enough credit. The fighting here begins before the actions down at Monocacy National Battlefield and would go till after the fighting down there is wrapped up. The fighting here at Jug Bridge would actually continue sporadically throughout the day, from sometime after 6 a.m. to probably around 5:30, 6 o'clock in the evening.
Do troops from these, I know that we've moved Stephen Ramser from this position over to the main portion of this story. Do the Ohio troops that are here, or any other U.S. troops that are here, move themselves over to what will become the bulk portion of the fighting, or are the U.S. troops that are here basically here for the duration of their day?
The 3 Ohio National Guard regiments that are here are going to shift around at various points throughout the day, but they are here. What's interesting about that, though, Pat, is that Erastus Tyler, the overall commander on this part of the line, does get some support. Tyler is actually going to be able to pull up additional troops from further down the Monocacy River, specifically the 1st and 3rd Maryland Potomac Home Brigade, which are guarding Crumbs and Reich's Ford a little further to the southwest of us. Some of those troops are going to be pulled into this part of the fight as well. What's interesting about how this skirmishing, pretty protracted skirmishing and straight up fighting that occurs here would end, is that by the end of the day, Allison Brown in particular, along with Erastus Tyler, have parried all of these Confederate attempts. But as Union troops begin to appear behind them, they realize that the situation has not gone well down at Monocacy Junction. Sorry for the spoilers there. But Federal forces begin the main retreat off the field via this road, via the Baltimore Pike. And it would come down to Erastus Taylor and Colonel Brown to hold this retreat route for as long as possible. Sometime between 5:30 and 6 p.m., we have Confederate forces beginning to cross the Monocacy River a little bit to the south of us, or southwest of us from here, so they're now sneaking around these Ohio guys. So they've got to pull them from this side of the river back across the bridge to the other side, and at this point, Erastus Tyler, Brigadier General Erastus Tyler, would literally give the order, now save who can, and the Ohio National Guard regiments here disintegrate.
How do we say that plainly, Matt? Save who can. Run!
Run!
Save yourselves!
Exactly, save yourselves.
At this point, it is a free-for-all to just survive the moment you're in.
Yep.
The chaos of the retreat, as we're going to get into, is one of the more chaotic moments in a chaotic battle, in a chaotic war. So, you know, you can't use that term enough to describe things like that. So thank you for hanging out with us thus far on our continued coverage of the Monocacy Junction campaign, Jubal Early's invasion of the North, the third time Confederate forces have crossed the Potomac River in force. We look forward to catching up with you guys at our next stop. See y'all later.